Hello everyone, this is all about qualitative research methods. We're going to go through a couple of the major designs. Posted online there is a guide to qualitative research. If you want to open this and fill it out during or at least after, this will help you make sure that you got what I want you to get, and it's a nice way to go through and compare. So we're going to talk about these four specifically, and then I'm going to mention a couple others just to think about. Phenomenology is our first one. So a phenomenon is some kind of a concept, experience, it's some event that has happened in participants' lives that you want to try to understand the essence of. So this could be some kind of an emotion, it could be an event, like I said, and you are trying to understand that experience. So essence is our keyword. We are trying to interview people who have had this experience, have some kind of a phenomenon, they've experienced it, and we are trying to boil it down to what is the essence of that experience. So for example, if we interviewed 20 widows to try to describe the death of their husband, and we could really narrow it down to what is the experience like to lose a loved one like that. In their own terms is really important here, and it's really vital to allow the essence to emerge. So you're not going in with any kind of a preconceived notion. You are trying to understand their experience throughout this. So we're going to use this when we have some kind of an event or phenomenon or experience that we want to understand how it is common and shared. So questions would be, how have you experienced this? What was the experience like? And you can also look at context or situations influenced by the phenomenon, either before or after. To do this, you're going to identify 5 to 25, typically, participants, and this is very purposeful selection. There are criteria to be in this sample because you have to have experienced it. So this is not going to be any kind of a random sample. You're going to be doing in-depth interviews, and you're going to be doing multiple in-depth interviews with all of your participants, 2 to 3 typically. You might have document analysis as a secondary source, maybe observation, but if we can observe this phenomenon, then I'm not sure a phenomenology is the right method. But maybe. Narrative is our second approach. So here we are describing the lives of an individual. So we are collecting and telling stories about someone's life. One person. And then we are going to tell their story. So the idea of restorying, that's kind of our keyword here. So we are getting every information that we can about this person's life and their experiences and why they're so important. And then we are going to take all of this data and we are going to re-story their life. It is really important to know that you will develop a very in-depth relationship with that person. So the researcher and participants become very close friends, and trust is incredibly vital because you are telling their story. You are putting their entire life out for examination. It is also important that you understand that this is assuming that knowledge itself is valuable and noteworthy if it's known by one person. So one person matters, and their story matters. So if we're just trying to document an event and record what happened, that's going to be history. So there's kind of subtle differences. If we're looking at an experience that participants have, that's phenomenology. But if we want to learn the significance of a life, the significance of an individual and how they take from their experiences, that is a narrative. You're going to do this if you like writing in stories. So I personally don't. But you need to be able to write in a storytelling way. You also will need a chronology event. When you are interviewing people, they don't talk in a linear manner. They don't start with, well, the day I was born, and then walk you through their life. You have to kind of reorganize that. You want participants to be close to you, and you want them to be very it's a very interactive setting. And you also have to be able to find somebody who's willing to share their story and have an important story that goes back to a research problem or question. There are lots of different types of narrative. I'm sure that you've seen lots of these, possibly even read a lot of them. And then to do this, you're going to collect a lot of data. I mean, just so much information. It's kind of crazy. Mostly it is based on interviews. So very in-depth interviews. You are also going to collect artifacts. So field studies, their journals, their notes, letters that have been written to them. You're going to document conversations that they're having as you were hanging out with them, because the interviews really do kind of go into more of a, hey, let's hang out and have dinner and spend time with your family, and the family stories are really important, the photos they have, their entire life experience. And the focus is to understand how people are creating meaning in their life and how we're going to restory it. So you have a problem, you find a person, you collect all the stories, and then to restory it, you just get so much information, and then you have to sort through it, put it back in order, collaborate with them, make sure that what you think you're finding is what they think they said. It's really, really important. Then you actually write the story and you validate it. Third up is ethnography. This is an incredibly fun one. So the purpose of ethnography, it's a fun word, is to understand a culture. So you can define culture in different ways. You could look at microcultures even, but you were looking at behaviors, beliefs, language of some kind of a group, exploring this in their natural setting and context. So this is collective experiences of a cultural group. And you're really looking at these shared patterns. So what are their beliefs? What are their behaviors? What is the language of people who interact on a regular basis? So that can be very general as to what a regular basis is. And you are also studying this over a period of time. So culture changes over time. So you kind of have to define what specifically you are looking at. So again, you're going to do this when you want to understand a culture sharing group. And you are going to get a day-to-day picture of this group. So a natural setting is incredibly vital. You're going to start with this broad, very, very, very broad research statement, and it really becomes very emergent and grows into the specifics as you are experiencing their culture. That's kind of, it allows you to explore a little bit more, and you're not tied down like some of these other methods. So to do this, you have kind of 3 different data sources: people, places, things. And your data collection is primarily based on participant observation. So you are actually immersing yourself in their culture. You are not just sitting back and observing. You have to be able to get access to the culture, and then you are part of it. You are enhancing your observation by interviewing and by document analysis, but these are really secondary to this observation. Challenges here, there's a lot of them. First of all, if you're going to experience a culture, you're not doing this in 6 months. These are typically 2 to 5 year studies where you are a part of their culture. So gaining access can be really hard. Defining the boundaries of the culture can be very hard. Building that trust is vital. Selecting key informants here. They're not telling on their culture as the way that sounds, but they are really giving you the access, and they are the people that you go to with all of your questions. So much data, and the time is incredible. You also have to maintain sensitivity to participants and resist going native. So you are experiencing this culture, you become part of it, but you still have to step back because you are a researcher within that. So ethically, it can get a little bit challenging. A case study is one of the most favorite qualitative methods. So here we are exploring a bounded system, which we call a case, or potentially more than one case, through a detailed, in-depth case study. So that is a really hard description. So a case study is essentially whatever you define this case as, and then you study everything within it. So a bounded system could be a classroom. A bounded system could be a physical school building. A bounded system could be a hotline for suicide. You could bound it like that. However you define the boundaries, and then you study everything that you can find within it. You're going to use a case study approach when we want a descriptive answer. So we are going to be describing this case and describing things that are happening in this case. These are very open and very exploratory. So how and why questions are really good for case studies. And you also want to provide an explanation to the description. So we are going to describe what's happening in this classroom. We're going to explain why it's happening, why it's amazing, whatever it is, and then we can project out from the case. Data collection is anything you can find within that bounded system. So our analysis here is really focusing on triangulation of all of these different things. We're going to interview, we might do focus groups, we're going to do observations, we're going to get documents and artifacts, and we're going to talk to everyone that we possibly can within this bounded system. So a few other types, just as an FYI. Grounded theory is a qualitative method where we are trying to generate an actual theory. So we don't have information on this theory. It's new. You are trying to develop it. And the idea is that we are going to ground it in very specific data. The methodology to do this is very, very, very intense. So we're not going to go too in-depth, as it's probably not practical for most of you. Historical analysis is when we have some kind of a question of something that has happened in the past, and so we have to rely on documents and artifact analysis. And the document analysis is very, very intense in order to understand whatever research question that we have. So one that I helped put together was, what did society want children to know about World War II? And they were looking at children's books published 1 to 10 years after World War II. So what was society trying to portray to children after that? Another one that I got to be part of the analysis team was, how were African American students prepared to enter STEM careers in historically Black colleges from the 1900s to about 1950. We did all of that through document analysis. Action research, we'll talk a little bit about this in class, but this could be quantitative, this could be qualitative, it could be mixed. So action research is a really great way to incorporate a lot of the data collection that we will find. And here we're really looking at some kind of a problem that we're trying to take action on. And we need to collect data and use research methods to make this decision, whatever that is.